that's hundreds, maybe 1,000 years old in your hands.
The RKM has been described as Russia's Stonehenge. Now this is quite intriguing because it's a very similar latitude.
Something about Siberia has always sent chills down my spine, and not just because of the cold. I recently stumbled upon a series of discoveries that left me completely stunned.
Until there's only space for a single warrior to pass.
Deep in the icy heart of Russia, ancient fortresses have been uncovered, and what archaeologists are finding is rewriting everything we thought we knew about early civilizations in this region. Let's get into it.
Ancient history is our history, and so as we discover history, we make history.
You know something big is up when a bunch of archaeology students stumble across weird mounds in the middle of nowhere, and their professor drops everything to check it out. That's exactly what happened in the summer of 1987, out on Russia's dusty southern Ural steppe. A group from the University of Chelyabinsk, led by archaeologist Gennady Zdanovich, conducted a pretty standard survey near the Bolshaya, Karaganka, and Utyaganka rivers. The area was supposed to be turned into a reservoir, so the team's goal was to make sure nothing historically important got washed away. But then came June 20th. Two students, Alexander Voronkov and Alexander Ezril, noticed these oddly shaped embankments that didn't seem natural. Curious, they flagged down Zdanovich, who took one look and realized this wasn't just a few bumps in the earth. This was something big. What they found turned out to be Archaeum, a fortified settlement connected to the Sintashta culture dating back to between 2100 and 1800 BCE. And here's where it gets fascinating. The place's layout was circular, with perfectly aligned concentric walls, narrow dwellings, and a drainage system that showed they were way ahead of their time. We're talking about early urban planning from over 4,000 years ago. Not bad for the Bronze Age. Now here's the kicker. Archaeum was smack in the middle of the planned reservoir zone. Basically, it was about to get erased. Zdanovich and his team knew they had to act fast. So they started a public campaign, not just with scientists, but also with writers, artists, and anyone who'd listen. And guess what? It worked. By April 1991, the government officially scrapped the reservoir project and protected Archaeum as a National Historical and Geographical Museum. Later digs revealed Archaeum wasn't a one-off. It was part of what archaeologists now call the Country of Towns, a whole network of similar ancient settlements scattered across the region, each one adding more depth to what we know about early Indo-European civilizations and the rise of complex societies. Meanwhile, over 2,500 miles away in the Judean desert, another ancient mystery has held its own secrets for centuries. Hyrcania, or Khirbet el Mird in Arabic, stands tall on an isolated hill about 200 meters above the Hyrcania Valley. It's roughly 16 kilometers east of Jerusalem and just 5 kilometers from Qumran. This fortress was likely built by either John Hyrcanus or his son Alexander Jannaeus, two guys who ruled Judea before BCE even had triple digits. Hyrcania's first big moment in the history books? Around 75 BCE, under Queen Salome Alexandra. She held on to this place like it was her personal treasure chest. And honestly, with that kind of elevation and view, who could blame her? Fast forward to 1960, when British archaeologist John Allegro and his team set out to explore the Hyrcania region. That's when things got really interesting. They found two steep tunnels cut into the cliffs of Wadi Sakaka, just north of the fortress. These weren't your average potholes. One ran 80 meters deep, the other a staggering 120 meters. No one's been able to agree on what they were for. A royal tomb? A piece of ancient water infrastructure from Iron Age 2? Or, as Michael Haber from the Hebrew University suggests, maybe a Herodian punishment project using slave labor. Whatever the truth is, it hasn't come fully to light. More digging literally happened between 2000 and 2006 under Oren Gutfeld. His team found 4 more rock-carved tunnels nearby, steep, narrow, and silent. 2 were excavated, but not much turned up. Just a Hasmonean period clay pot, a skeleton of a young woman with sword wounds dating to the 1st century BCE, and, oddly enough, the bones of a hyrax carbon dated to 590 BCE. No solid answers, just more pieces of a puzzle. And then, in 1950, something unexpected scrolls. A cache of papyri from the 7th and 8th centuries CE, remnants of ancient monastic libraries. Among them are parts of the Acts of the Apostles in Christian Palestinian Aramaic. It turned out that Hyrcania wasn't just a fortress. By the 5th century, it had become home to a monastery called Castellion, active into the 9th century. Mural-covered burial caves told the stories of 36 saints, though not all their images were left untouched. Just when you think you've seen every version of ancient resilience, you find yourself all the way in Russia, more specifically near Ulan-Ude, where the Ivolginsky fortress quietly guards its own piece of history. Back in 1949, a team of Soviet archaeologists led by Professor Alexei P. Okladnikov set out on what seemed like a standard field expedition. Their destination? The valleys around the Selenga River in Siberia. Their goal? To find traces of early human life. Pretty ambitious, right? But on June 17th, near a quiet little village called Ivolga, about 23 kilometers from Ulan-Ude, they stumbled upon something that made their scientific hearts skip a beat. What looked like random mounds of earth turned out to be ancient fortifications. We're talking about earthen ramparts and wooden remains from centuries ago. These weren't just flukes in the landscape. They were clues. Clues that pointed to a once bustling fortress now known as the Ivolginsky Fortress, or Ivolginskoye Gorodishche, for those who like to flex their Russian pronunciation. Realizing they were onto something big, Okladnikov's team rolled up their sleeves and got to work, and that patience actually paid off. Over several years, they uncovered an entire ancient settlement. Think dwellings, granaries, storage pits, and even defensive walls, all spread over a 15-hectare area. Not too shabby for a place built in the 3rd century BCE. The real jackpot? Over 200 clay figurines, likely spiritual relics, along with pottery shards, iron tools, and bronze ornaments. You could almost picture the people who once lived there, probably engaged in farming, herding horses, cattle, and sheep, and clearly not strangers to a good bit of craftsmanship. Radiocarbon dating confirmed the fortress's age, tying it neatly to the early Iron Age. And the cherry on top? Experts eventually linked the site to the Xiongnu culture, the same group that once squared off with ancient Chinese dynasties. It turns out that these weren't just peaceful villagers, but part of a complex society with serious strategic thinking. And just when you think you've wrapped your head around that, you find yourself standing on a cliff above the Dead Sea, staring at a desert fortress called Masada that holds one of the most powerful stories in Jewish history. Originally built between 37 and 31 BCE by none other than King Herod the Great. Yes, that Herod. The place was designed as a fortified palace complex. Think luxury retreat meets doomsday bunker. But Masada wasn't just about pampered living. It became the final holdout of Jewish rebels during the First Jewish-Roman War. And what happened around 73 CE? Let's just say that things ended on a deeply tragic note. The first whispers of Masada's secrets surfaced way back in 1842, when American missionary Samuel W. Wolcott and artist William J. Tipping scrambled up the plateau and came back with some eye-opening sketches. And even earlier in 1838, explorers Edward Robinson and Eli Smith had noted the site's potential. But despite all the eyebrow-raising curiosity, no one really rolled up their sleeves until the mid-20th century. Enter Professor Yigael Yadin, former chief of staff of the Israel Defense Forces turned archaeologist extraordinaire. In October 1963, Yadin led what can only be described as a dig of dreams. His words? A dream of ages has come true. Masada has been excavated and reconstructed, and he wasn't exaggerating. Between 1963 and 1965, more than 5,000 volunteers from 28 countries, students, soldiers, and history buffs braved brutal desert heat and rugged terrain, all for the chance to uncover Masada's secrets. And boy, did they deliver. We're talking about 97% of the built-up area carefully excavated, Among the treasures unearthed, Herod's lavish northern palace with its 3 tiers, Roman-style bathhouses, and jaw-dropping frescoes. Long, narrow storerooms that once held essential supplies. One of the oldest known synagogues, where fragments of Deuteronomy and Ezekiel were found. Let's not forget the Roman siege ramp, a chilling reminder of how the fortress was eventually overrun. The real kicker? 11 tiny pottery shards, or ostraca, each etched with Hebrew names, one even marked Ben Yair, possibly pointing to Eleazar ben Yair, the rebels' last leader. And then there were the skeletons, 25 individuals in a cave, and 2 more, plus a braided head of hair, found inside the palace bathhouse. Some scholars raised eyebrows when pig bones were discovered nearby, hinting that not all the remains might belong to Jewish defenders. Just a short hop across the globe, and high above the ancient capital of the Inca Empire, sits another jaw-dropper, Sacsayhuaman in Peru. Perched high above Cusco, this ancient Inca site looks like something straight out of a fantasy novel. Only, it's very real. Built in the 15th century during the reign of Pachacutec. That's the 9th Inca emperor, ruling between 1438 and 1471. Sacsayhuaman shows off just how advanced the Incas really were when it came to building stuff. And I'm not talking about your average mud huts. We're talking massive stone walls with individual stones weighing several tons. Some of them fit together so perfectly that you couldn't even slide a sheet of paper between them. No mortar, no glue, just genius. Fast forward to 1934, when a major part of this site was rediscovered during archaeological digs. That moment reintroduced the world to this incredible fortress-like complex. And just when everyone thought they had it all figured out, 2008 rolled around with another twist. The structural remains of ancient buildings belonging to the pre-Inca Quilque culture were unearthed. Yep, turns out this place was already buzzing with activity before the Incas even showed up. Things got even more interesting in 2024. Cutting-edge excavations were launched to dig deeper into the site's origins, trying to understand what Sacsayhuaman truly was before the Spanish set foot in Peru. And then came January 2025. Archaeologists Jorge Calero Flores and Mildred Fernandez Palomino dropped a bombshell. They claim to have found Inca-built underground passages beneath Cusco. According to them, these ancient tunnels connect Sacsayhuaman to other legendary sites like the Coricancha. Based on ancient documents and georadar scans, the findings stirred up both excitement and a fair bit of raised eyebrows. Let's just say not everyone's convinced. But still, if those tunnels are real, this could rewrite a whole chunk of what we thought we knew. But if you think Sacsayhuaman is impressive, just wait until you hear about Cuelap. Hidden away in the northern Andes of Peru, Cuelap is the pride and joy of the Chachapoya civilization. You know, the ones they call the Warriors of the Clouds. These folks weren't just warriors though, they were master builders, and Cuelap is their mic drop moment in stone. Now, this place isn't some modern insta-discovery. Back in 1843, a judge named Juan Crisostomo Nieto stumbled upon Cuelap while doing his rounds in the Utcubamba Valley. Locals told him about massive stone structures on a mountain ridge, so he hiked up with a crew to see what the fuss was about. And what did they find? Not some small ruin, but massive stone walls wrapped around a city of circular buildings, some etched with geometric designs that could rival any modern architect's doodles. But even with such a discovery, Cuelap stayed off the radar for a while. Its remote location, tangled in dense cloud forest, made it more like a whispered legend than a tourist destination. That is, until the late 1800s, when Charles Wiener, a French explorer and diplomat, heard about it and decided it deserved a mention, even though he never actually made the trip. Still, that one nod sparked curiosity beyond Peru's borders. Then, in 1894, German archaeologist Adolf Bandelier took things to a new level. He braved the rugged terrain with his wife by his side and reached the fortress. Bandelier's detailed notes revealed walls soaring up to 62 feet tall and more than 400 round structures packed within. He noticed tight, narrow entry points, definitely not by accident, clearly designed for protection. Fast forward to the 1930s, and along came Julio C. Tello, often called the father of Peruvian archaeology. He didn't just admire the structure, he connected the dots. Tello believed Cuelap wasn't just a fortress. It was a political, spiritual, and cultural powerhouse. As decades passed, those dots turned into a clearer picture. In the late 20th century, Alfredo Narvaez pushed the story even further. His excavations uncovered textiles, pottery, and even tools, offering a sneak peek into everyday life back then. And yes, there were signs the Incas had their moment here too, long after the original builders were gone. And just as you're still catching your breath from that mountaintop marvel, El Castillo rises in the west. Towering at about 130 feet, 40 meters. This ancient Maya pyramid isn't just tall, it's the second tallest structure in all of Belize. And trust me, it's not just the height that'll leave you speechless. El Castillo stands proud in the heart of Xunantunich, an archaeological site nestled in western Belize, practically a time capsule of Maya history. The first guy to poke around here was Dr. Thomas Gann, a British medical doctor who moonlighted as an archaeologist. Back in the 1890s, while serving as district surgeon and commissioner in what was then British Honduras, he developed a serious curiosity for the Maya. In 1892, he kicked off the first official investigations at Xunantunich. And boom, the rest of the world finally took notice. After Gann's initial dig, another British archaeologist, Sir J. Eric S. Thompson, stepped in. He wasn't just digging around for fun. He got methodical with it. Thompson created the first ceramic chronology of the region, which, in simple terms, means he gave us the timeline puzzle pieces we needed to understand the site's deeper history. Fast forward to 1959 and 1960, the Cambridge expedition rolls in, featuring archaeologist Ewan McKee. He zoomed in on structures like A11 and a residential area dubbed A15. His notes on the layers of earth and debris helped piece together how the Maya once lived, and maybe why they stopped living there so suddenly. Something big happened toward the end of the Classic period, and it shook up life here, literally. But it didn't end there. Between 1991 and 1997, the Xunantunich Archaeological Project, XAP, went all in, examining everything from architecture to social dynamics, trying to figure out where El Castillo fit into the grand Maya civilization. And the pyramid? It's a stunner. Built in two phases, the earlier one, structure A6 second, came around 800 AD with 3 doorways. The later version, a 6-1st, scaled it back to just 2. But what really draws people in are the stucco friezes. These aren't just decorative, they tell stories. Themes of creation, royal lineage, and the iconic Maya Tree of Life stretch across the surface, connecting the underworld, earth, and heavens like one epic spiritual ladder. Not quite ready to come down from that high? Just wait until you lay eyes on Japan's Matsui Castle. Nicknamed the Black Castle, this fortress dates all the way back to the early 1600s. It was built between 1607 and 1611 by Horio Yoshiharu, a feudal lord who clearly had an eye for architecture and defense. Unlike most castles that have either been rebuilt, knocked down, or turned into something else entirely, Matsue Castle is one of only 12 original castles still standing in Japan. That's kind of a big deal considering everything it survived, from the wear and tear of time to more than a few conflicts. It's not flashy or overly decorated, but it holds that rugged, stoic beauty that somehow makes you want to bow when you walk past it. But here's where things get even more interesting. Fast forward to the late 1990s. A team from the Shimane Prefectural Archaeological Association decided to go digging around to learn more about the area's past. Their focus? A hill called Mount Tawa in the Noshiracho neighborhood, a peaceful-looking place overlooking Lake Shinji. From 1997 to 2000, the team got to work, and they uncovered a triple-ring moat system dating back to the Yayoi period, which is somewhere between 300 BCE and 300 CE. That's ancient history with a capital A. The biggest moat? 7 meters wide and 1.8 meters deep. Not your average garden trench. Inside these moats, archaeologists found over 3,000 stone arrowheads, blades, and tools. So either this spot was a heavily protected stronghold or a very serious ceremony site. Either way, someone went to great lengths to protect it. These discoveries didn't just add a few museum pieces, they redefined the historical weight of the Matsue area. Turns out, the castle wasn't the only star of the show. On the gentle shores of Lake Geneva in Switzerland, 1,000 kilometers away, stands another stone beauty, Chateau de Chillon. This place didn't wait around to be discovered. It's been basking in admiration for centuries. Back in medieval times, it served as a power seat for the Counts of Savoy, and later the Bernese, standing tall and proud like the ultimate lakeside VIP. But it wasn't until the late 1800s that someone decided this castle deserved a proper makeover. Not the flashy kind, but the deeply thoughtful, archaeological kind. Enter Albert Naef in 1896. He was a Swiss archaeologist and architect who was appointed as the cantonal archaeologist for Vaud. Instead of just dusting off the castle's cobwebs and calling it a day, he dove into a full-on restoration project. And when we say restoration, we mean he got down to the nitty-gritty. From 1896 to 1898, Naef led extensive archaeological digs around the castle for 2 years. He took notes like a student trying to ace every final, organizing his findings by section, by project type, and probably even by the direction the wind was blowing that day. He didn't just fix the place. He studied, documented, and even created molds for comparison with other medieval buildings in the Savoy region. The man literally left no stone unexamined. And what did all that digging reveal? Foundations that traced all the way back to the Bronze Age and Roman times. Suddenly, the castle wasn't just a medieval masterpiece. It was a time capsule that had been sitting on Lake Geneva's shore for centuries. Naef's work helped historians piece together what belonged to which era, especially when separating the medieval bones from the Bernese additions. His meticulous efforts caught international attention. In August 1898, Alfredo d'Andrade, an inspector of historical monuments from Piedmont and Liguria, showed up and nodded in approval. That's the preservationist equivalent of a standing ovation. But even perfection has its critics. By 1908, there was a noticeable lean toward aesthetics over science. Think, let's make it look nice, versus let's keep it authentic. Some weren't thrilled, sparking debates that continue to echo through conservation circles even today. And just when you think that's a lot of castle drama, wait till you hear what went down in the Bavarian Alps with another historic site that had its own restoration saga. Perched on a hill in northern Syria, the citadel of Aleppo has seen more civilizations than your average history textbook can fit. It's one of the biggest and oldest castles in the world. But for a long time, much of its backstory was pretty much guesswork. In 1996, a joint mission kicked off, bringing together the brains from the Museum of Islamic Art in Berlin, HTW Berlin, and Syria's own Directorate of Antiquities and Museums. It was like forming the Avengers of ancient architecture. Led by Professor Dr. K. Kohlmeier, this crew wasn't just poking around for pottery. They were determined to uncover the soul of Aleppo's iconic fortress. 15 years later, in 2011, they wrapped up their work with discoveries that turned heads in the academic world and beyond. Among their most jaw-dropping finds, a temple dedicated to Hadad, the ancient storm god. We're talking about the middle of the 3rd millennium BC. References to this very temple showed up in cuneiform texts from places like Ebla and Mari, adding some serious credibility to the citadel's spiritual status. In fact, those weathered stones revealed that the temple had been in use for centuries, from as early as the 24th century BC up until the 9th century BC. What they uncovered wasn't just some tiny shrine either. Massive wall remnants suggested this temple once towered over the landscape, proudly marking Aleppo as the city of Hadad. Basically, this hill wasn't just sacred, it was the spot, and the history doesn't stop there. The citadel has been passed around like a prized trophy. Assyrians, Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, and a whole string of Islamic dynasties all left their signature touches. But the heavy lifting, quite literally, was done during the Ayyubid period in the 12th century. Saladin's son, Sultan al-Zahir al-Ghazi, gave the fortress a major glow-up, turning it into the powerhouse structure we recognize today. Digging through its layers, archaeologists pieced together stories of daily life, defense strategies, and ancient craftsmanship, from pottery to inscriptions that still whisper their secrets. Through this decades-long effort, the citadel didn't just share its history, it reconnected Aleppo with a legacy too powerful to ignore. Not every fortress has to be dug up to feel like a time machine. Case in point, Berg Eltz in Germany. Tucked away in the forested hills between Koblenz and Trier in Germany, perched above the scenic Moselle River, Berg Eltz isn't your typical medieval ruin. In fact, it's one of the rare few that was never destroyed or left to crumble. The first time Berg Eltz appeared in history books was in 1157, when Rudolf von Eltz appeared as a witness on a deed issued by Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa. And yes, that means the Eltz family has been in the picture for over 850 years. That's 33 generations of one family holding onto their ancestral home, like it's their life's mission. And clearly, it worked. See, while other castles got caught in wars or forgotten in overgrown forests, the Eltz family quietly maintained theirs like a really expensive family heirloom. No dramatic rediscovery here, just solid commitment year after year. Now fast forward to the 19th century, during that whole Romanticism wave when Europe became obsessed with all things medieval. Count Karl zu Eltz took that opportunity to restore the place, not in a flashy, let's modernize it kind of way, but with deep respect for its roots. Between 1845 and 1888, he spent a jaw-dropping 184,000 German marks, which back then was a fortune, just to preserve its authenticity. And get this, Berg Eltz has 8 towers, each stretching up to 35 meters high, built during different phases to reflect family divisions. Yes, apparently, medieval real estate drama was a thing. Even though it never needed to be unearthed, historians and architects have dug deep to understand its layout, defenses, and the lives of those who once called it home. It's like a time capsule that never needed to be found. Because, well, it never got lost in the first place. Just a few countries over, tucked into the misty hills of Sintra, Portugal, another castle holds its own legendary weight, the Castle of the Moors. Built back in the 8th and 9th centuries by the Moors, this fortress had one job, to be the ultimate lookout, and honestly, it nailed it. With sweeping views of the region, it was prime real estate for anyone trying to keep an eye on things. But as time went on and power shifted, the castle started to get, well, a little neglected. Not forgotten, just kind of left hanging like an unread message. Fast forward to the 19th century, and the place had definitely seen better days. Enter King Ferdinand II of Portugal, who clearly had a soft spot for moody medieval ruins. Around 1840, he kicked off restoration efforts, pledging 240 reais annually to bring the place back to life. Think reforestation, romantic landscaping, and some seriously solid wall repairs. He basically gave the castle its glow-up. Then came the 20th century, and the Portuguese government decided to take things a step further. In 1939, the Directorate General for National Buildings and Monuments, DGEMN, rolled up their sleeves and got to work. They rebuilt parts of the wall, restored the chapel's side door, and focused on making sure the structure didn't crumble into the forest. But here's where it gets really interesting. Starting in 1976, the castle became the site of ongoing archaeological digs. And it wasn't just poking around in the dirt. By 1979, they'd uncovered medieval tombs in the Chapel of San Pedro, dating back to the early 13th century. That's some serious history coming back to say hello. By 2009, things leveled up again. Parques de Sintra established a full-on archaeological research field to dig deeper, literally and figuratively. From pottery shards to everyday tools, the discoveries kept piling up, giving us an up-close look at what life was like inside those ancient stone walls. Not bad for a fortress that just needed a little love and patience, right? What do you think about the hidden mysteries of Siberia's ancient fortresses? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this intriguing, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more fascinating historical discoveries, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.